The quantum forge hummed beneath Jack's calloused fingers as he calibrated the nanoweave matrix for the third time that hour. Sparks danced across his workshop's dim interior, casting shadows that flickered like dying stars against walls lined with salvaged tech and half-assembled weaponry. Outside, the acid rain of Terminus 7 hammered against reinforced steel, a relentless percussion that had become his only companion in 3 years of exile. "Your pulse rifle is ready," Jack called out, not looking up from his work. "Enhanced plasma chamber, just like you specified. Should punch through Class 4 armor like tissue paper." Melissa stood by the viewport, her silhouette framed against the toxic orange sky. She wore the standard combat fatigues of a frontier mercenary: carbon fiber weave, tactical harness, boots caked with the rust-colored mud of a dozen different worlds. But there was something in the way she carried herself, a precision in her movements that suggested training far beyond what any mercenary academy could provide. "You've outdone yourself again, engineer," she said, her voice carrying an accent Jack couldn't quite place. It shifted subtly, as if she was speaking multiple languages simultaneously, and his neural translator couldn't decide which one to prioritize. Jack finally looked up, wiping sweat from his brow with an oil-stained rag. "It's just Jack, and you're paying well enough that outdoing myself is kind of the minimum requirement." She turned, and even in the workshop's harsh utility lighting, her features struck him as oddly familiar, though he was certain they'd never met before she'd arrived on Terminus 7 6 months ago. Dark eyes that seemed to calculate trajectories and probabilities with every glance. A scar along her jawline that could have been from a blade or a plasma burn, impossible to tell with modern medical technology. "This war you're fighting," Jack ventured, testing waters he'd avoided until now, "must be important if you need this much firepower." Melissa picked up the rifle, her fingers moving across its surface with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd handled thousands of weapons. The biometric lock recognized her instantly, another modification Jack had implemented, keyed specifically to her genetic signature. "All wars are important to those fighting them," she replied, sighting down the barrel at an imaginary target. "This one just happens to span 17 star systems." Jack whistled low. 17 systems meant this was no local conflict, no border skirmish between mining corporations or territorial dispute between colony worlds. This was something bigger, something the public networks weren't reporting. "You're not just a soldier," he said slowly, pieces clicking into place with the same satisfying precision as the weapons he assembled. "Soldiers don't have access to the kind of credits you've been transferring. Soldiers don't carry quantum-encrypted units with military-grade AI assistance. And soldiers definitely don't have genetic markers that require level 9 clearance to even read." He'd discovered that last detail by accident while calibrating the biometric lock, his scanner briefly flagging her DNA as classified information before his workshop's ancient systems had been locked out entirely. Melissa lowered the rifle, and for the first time since they'd met, she smiled. It transformed her face, replacing the warrior's mask with something both ancient and ageless. "You're observant, Jack. That's why I came here." She gestured to the view, where 3 new stars had just appeared in the toxic sky, except they weren't stars. They were ships, descending through Terminus 7's atmosphere with the controlled fury of orbital insertion. Jack's blood turned to ice. "Those are Imperium cruisers. Melissa, what have you brought to my doorstep?" "My doorstep, actually," she corrected, her voice taking on a different quality, now commanding absolute, the kind of voice that had shaped civilizations. "This planet, this system, this entire sector, all mine." The workshop's terminal exploded to life, filling the cramped space with a 3-dimensional projection of a woman in ceremonial armor, surrounded by what appeared to be an entire command bridge of military personnel. The projection's eyes widened as she looked past Jack to Melissa. "Your Imperial Majesty," the projection said, dropping to one knee. Behind her, dozens of officers did the same. "We've secured the system. The rebellion has been crushed. Your presence is requested aboard the flagship." Jack's legs felt weak. "Imperial Majesty." The words echoed in his mind like the death knell of everything he thought he understood about the past 6 months. "Melissa." "No," the Empress nodded at the projection. "Acknowledged, Admiral. I'll transport shortly." The terminal went dark. "You're the Galactic Empress," Jack whispered, the words feeling absurd even as he spoke them. "The ruler of the Imperium, and I've been, building you toys, helping you play soldier." "You've been helping me end a war," she corrected, setting the rifle down with care. "My generals, my advisors, my entire court, they see warfare as chess, moving fleets and armies like pieces on a board. But I needed to understand what they don't, how individual weapons perform, how soldiers think, how battles are actually won in the trenches and the workshops and the forgotten places. Like Terminus 7, she reached into her tactical harness and withdrew a small device, placing it on Jack's workbench. It pulsed with soft blue light and Imperial seal, authentic and undeniable. The war is over, Jack. 17 systems are at peace because I learned what I needed to learn, because an engineer on a toxic planet taught an empress how to fight like a warrior instead of a queen. Jack stared at the seal, then at her, then at the ships hovering outside like patient predators. So what happens now? You leave? I go back to fixing mining equipment and pretending this never happened. The Empress picked up the rifle one last time, checking the charge indicator with professional efficiency. Now you have a choice. Stay here and continue your exile, or accept a position as Master Engineer of the Imperial Arsenal. The Imperium could use someone who asks questions and pays attention. She walked toward the door, pausing at the threshold. Rain hammered against the metal above, but the sound seemed distant now, drowned out by the thrum of waiting ships. Either way, Jack, you helped change the galaxy. That's more than most people can say. The door sealed behind her with a hiss of pressurized air. Jack stood alone in his workshop, surrounded by the tools of his trade and the ghost of a woman who had been so much more than she appeared. Outside, the ships began their ascent, carrying an Empress home. And on his workbench, the Imperial seal continued to pulse, waiting for an answer.